I raised my glass to the crisp clinking that echoed through the private dining room at Lafayette, the most upscale restaurant in downtown Austin. The crystal chandelier cast reflections across the black dress I had carefully chosen 3 weeks earlier. Sitting across from me was Mr. Grant Halverson, strategic partner from Clarion Partners, who had just agreed to invest $6.5 million to take my family's specialty food brand nationwide. My name is Avery Monroe. I'm 36 years old. Nearly 9 years ago, I walked away from my role as a portfolio manager at a major financial firm in Dallas to come home and save the small artisanal bakery my parents had run since 1989. Back then, people called me crazy, giving up a six-figure salary in a corner office to bake cookies and pack marshmallows. But I saw something others didn't. Potential. Tonight, the same people who once doubted me are laughing and raising their glasses in celebration. But I can't take my eyes off my parents. They're sitting together, glowing, still holding hands like they have for years. My father, Carl, looks 10 years younger. My mother, June, with wine-colored lipstick, nods proudly as Mr. Grant mentions my name. We're thrilled to partner with Avery as she expands distribution to at least 40 states in our first year, Grant announced. Monroe Artisan Goods didn't succeed by luck, it was vision and relentless commitment. I nodded softly, thanking him with my eyes. We had come this far, from a tiny storefront in Fort Worth to preparing to launch in major grocery chains and premium online gift boxes. Amid the laughter, I heard a quiet voice next to my ear. "You've done wonderfully, Avery." It was my mother. She leaned in, her hand gently squeezing mine under the table, like she was about to share something meaningful. I turned to her, but her next words drained the color from my face. "When Dylan gets back next month, I think it'll be time for him to take over as CEO. You've built a solid foundation, but Dylan has an international MBA and global market experience." I stared at her, speechless. Dylan? My younger brother. The golden boy of the family, who had been finding himself abroad for nearly a year after finishing grad school in Amsterdam. While I was breaking my back building revenue, he'd only sent the occasional dry email like, "You doing okay?" I swallowed the lump in my throat, forced a smile, and said, "That's wonderful, Mom." I raised my glass a bit higher to hide the white-knuckled grip I had on its stem. I couldn't hear anything Grant was saying about our marketing strategy. My mother's sentence echoed like a bomb in my head. I had sacrificed nearly a decade to revive a dying business. I'd sold my only car to make payroll. I'd slept on a folding chair because I couldn't afford rent. I'd worked 20-hour days to scrape together the capital for our production facility. And with one sentence, everything I had done was reduced to the setup for Dylan. "You okay?" Grant leaned over, noticing my distant look. "I'm great," I replied, keeping my professional smile, just thinking about the future. But in my mind, something had shifted. I knew next Monday wouldn't be just another day. It would be the beginning of something else. A point of no return, where I would no longer tolerate injustice dressed as family loyalty. 8 years ago, as I stepped out of the glass tower that housed Blackridge Capital, I knew I wasn't coming back. I had just been promoted to associate partner, earning over $200,000 a year, while my managing director popped champagne to celebrate a new deal. But I couldn't celebrate. My mother had called right after the meeting, crying, telling me they were about to sell Monroe Bakery because they were 3 months behind on rent. That bakery was where I grew up, where the scent of gingerbread filled every Christmas, where I learned how to make caramel with my dad when I was 8. I couldn't let it go under. Friends called me insane. "You're about to be a VP, Avery, and you're throwing it away to make strawberry jam?" That was Erica, my best friend and longtime coworker. Even Dylan, then in his senior year at NYU, texted me a single line, "It's not worth it. It's just a shop, not a real career." But they didn't understand. I wasn't just saving a business. I was preserving my parents' dignity, holding on to a piece of family identity. I started from less than zero. The storage room was falling apart, the accounting software was from 2002, and the website, well, there wasn't one. Monthly revenue barely matched a week's worth of my old salary. but I worked like I was running a Fortune 500 company. I sold my Lexus to pay off supplier debt, moved into the flour and sugar storage room, set up a folding cot next to the packing machine, worked until 2 a.m. every night, my eyes burning from staring at Excel sheets. I negotiated shipping fees dollar by dollar, hand wrote every word for our first website, and personally shipped our first few orders because I couldn't afford to hire help. That summer, warehouse temps hit 98 degrees, but I baked, boxed, and shipped to every state I could reach. Meanwhile, Dylan was in Italy, staying in an Airbnb villa in Florence, sipping wine, and posting about his global business journey with captions like, "Invest in experiences, not just assets." My mother proudly shared the post on Facebook with the caption, "So proud of my son, a future leader." I laughed dryly. My dad just said, "He needs time, sweetheart. Don't pressure him. He's got a strategic mind." And me? I was the one creating strategies down to every cookie batch, every shipment, every email campaign, with a team of just 3 people. 6 months in, orders surged after a food blogger featured our brand. I seized the momentum and launched the Taste of Texas gift box line. Everything from packaging to brand storytelling was curated to perfection. Each box came hand-packed with a handwritten thank you note from me. Like, the next year, we crossed our first $1 million in revenue. I didn't throw a party. Instead, I reinvested the profits into a glass jar production line, hired a new design team, built out our CRM, trained our delivery staff. Dylan called once, asking if I could send him some money for unexpected tuition costs. I wired him $5,000 and said nothing. No one in the family asked where the money came from. No one knew I had mortgaged my own apartment to fund the factory expansion. In year 4, I landed a deal with a Fairway grocery chain. I stood alone at a food expo in Denver, handing out cookie samples like any other brand rep. When the contract was signed, I didn't call home. I shipped a sample box, hoping they'd be proud. But when I called, my mom just said, "Dylan just got accepted into an executive MBA program in Europe. We're getting ready to send him off to Belgium. If you're launching something new, make sure to let Dylan help with operations, to get him familiar before he officially takes over." Take over? I gripped the phone. That sentence hit right where I had always pretended the wound didn't exist. I thought I was prepared, but last night when my mother leaned in and whispered, "Dylan will be CEO," I finally saw it. I was never the heir. I was the placeholder, the warm-up act, the shadow, the one meant to hold the door until the chosen one arrived. The sound of a bottle being uncorked rang out just as Mr. Grant raised his glass for one final toast that evening. Beside him stood Miss Cheryl Liu, Clarion's Director of Strategic Development, the one overseeing the release of the $6.5 million investment for Monroe Artisan Goods right after the holidays. I kept my professional smile, but my mind was razor sharp. I didn't miss the way Miss Liu's eyes lingered on my mother the moment she casually dropped what felt like a grenade. "Dylan will surely bring fresh energy to the company when he returns. He was born to lead." Not a single mention of me. No explanation for why the so-called natural-born leader had been missing for 8 years. No one laughed. I felt the room quiet down, then shift topics smoothly. But investors don't forget the small things that might affect their money. 3 days later, in a closed-door meeting at our new Dallas headquarters, Mr. Grant got straight to the point. "We need a clear confirmation on leadership structure. Who will be CEO after the funding is finalized?" "I currently hold that position," I replied, "and will continue to lead." But before I could even present the 3-year plan I had prepared in detail, my mother, June, spoke slowly, her voice as sweet as maple syrup. "Dylan will be back next week. He has an international MBA in operations management. We believe he's best suited to lead the company in this next phase." I didn't turn my head. I kept my gaze fixed on Mr. Grant, even as I heard him let out a quiet sigh. "Ms. Monroe," he said, this time without the warmth he'd had at the dinner, "our decision to invest was based on actual performance, not degrees or family lineage. Any major leadership change requires prior notice and could trigger a full reassessment of our agreement." The energy in the room dropped like someone had pulled the air out of it. My father sat silently, as always, the one who avoided conflict. My mother frowned, clearly caught off guard by how her words had backfired. I sat up straighter and clicked to slide 2 of my deck. The Western Distribution Expansion Project was designed and executed by me directly, I said, my tone clear. The pilot phase produced a profit margin of 19.7%, well above our initial target of 12%. All partnership contracts with Ainsley Rochford and Belmont Foods were secured through my direct negotiation. I advanced to the next slide. In 18 months, we've grown 289%. We now have 64,000 active subscribers in our gift box program, a model I developed from scratch using a WordPress demo site back in 2017 when Dylan was still hosting music festivals in Belgium. Silence. No rebuttals, no counter-arguments, no one could. But what stunned me wasn't the investor's reaction. It was my mother's. A soft shake of her head. Not with disappointment, but something worse. Pity. "You've done well, Avery," she said gently, as if I were a stubborn child refusing to share toys. "But Dylan has a natural gift for leadership. You're good at execution. Your brother sees the big picture." I gave a dry laugh. If anyone had sacrificed their youth to build a real vision, it was me, not the guy posting filtered photos from Santorini with captions like, "Dream big, live slow." I closed my laptop. "Let's make it clear," I said, turning to Mr. Grant and Miss Liu. "Who are your investors backing? Proven results or wishful thinking? The one who built the revenue or someone's so-called natural potential?" A beat passed, then Mr. Grant looked me dead in the eye and said calmly, "We invest in performance, not bloodlines, and I strongly suggest the Monroe family make a definitive decision before we make one of our own." I left the meeting with a pulse that was steady to the point of cold. I didn't need investors to protect me from my own family, but if a choice had to be made, this time I wasn't stepping aside like some shadow. Saturday morning, before the sun had even pierced through the 7th-floor windows of Monroe Artisan Goods headquarters, I was already there. No one in the company knew I had arrived at 5:20 a.m. I turned on the conference room lights, opened my laptop, and laid out every strategic draft and financial projection I'd been quietly building for the past 3 years. I had once hoped I'd never have to use them, but my mother shattered that illusion with a single sentence. "Dylan will be the one to lead." If they intended to push me out of the very company I rebuilt from ashes, I wouldn't beg for my role. I would take everything that truly mattered and start over. At 6 a.m., I called the one person I trusted enough to share my next move, my former business school professor at Rice University, Dr. Elaine Conrad. She was the first to teach me about leverage in negotiations, and the first to warn me that unless I held controlling equity, I was just a highly competent tenant in a house I'd built. "Avery? Calling this early?" Her voice was groggy but sharp as ever. "I need to meet first thing tomorrow morning, as early as possible, and I need your unfiltered advice. There's no room for emotion anymore." A pause. "Where?" "Monroe headquarters. Bring black coffee. I'll have the slides ready." At 7:15 a.m. Sunday, Dr. Conrad walked into the conference room, serious expression, 2 coffees in hand from Italian Joe's, my old college favorite. She glanced at the glass wall covered in charts, supply chain flows, a nationwide distribution map, 3 years of growth data, and a whiteboard with one bold heading. "Orion Foods, a new beginning." I laid it out clearly. Orion Foods would be a completely new entity, separate from the Monroe name. I would transfer the entire operational system, key personnel, manufacturing contracts, and customer base into the new company. I wouldn't take the brand. I'd leave Monroe Artisan Goods to them, because I knew real value doesn't lie in a name. "You think Clarion will go with you?" she asked, eyes sharp like a scalpel. "That depends on just one thing. Are they investing in me or in the Monroe name?" She didn't answer right away, but when I opened the detailed year-one financial plan, complete with projected profits and realistic growth based on verified data, she nodded. Make the call. If you're walking, you're not walking away empty-handed. By 9:30 a.m. Sunday, I was at Clarion Capital's office. Mr. Grant, Miss Sherrill, and two of their senior attorneys were already waiting. They thought it was a final review before the disbursement. They were wrong. I don't want Clarion investing in a company I don't control, I began. I have a different proposal. Redirect the full $6.5 million investment into Orion Foods, a new company. I'll be CEO. No shares for my parents. No Dylan. The room went dead quiet. Mr. Grant leaned back. You're saying you're pulling out of the company that bears your family's name? No, I said. I'm saying I won't keep playing the role of a hired hand in a legacy I rebuilt alone. I'm done fighting for space in a house that's always kept the front door locked on me. I handed them a printed dossier, Orion's company structure, operational diagrams, letters of intent from 3 manufacturers, confirming their willingness to transfer contracts, and even signed job offers from 5 key staff members who would follow me. I need Clarion's decision by Monday. Grant raised an eyebrow. How long have you been preparing this? 3 years. Since my parents started talking about letting Dylan ease into the business. Michelle flipped through the pages. What about the brand? I'm not taking the Monroe name, but customers aren't loyal to names. They're loyal to experience, and that experience, from the recipes to the packaging to the way we serve, that was all me. Mr. Grant gave a dry smile. You've accounted for everything? Even your family's reaction to you preparing an exit plan behind their backs? I met his eyes. I didn't prepare to exit, I prepared to protect myself before the people closest to me were the first to turn away. No one said a word for nearly a minute. Then Mr. Grant sat up straighter, his tone shifting. We'll review this seriously, and if we move toward Orion, I hope you're ready for war. I nodded. I'm not here to ask permission. I'm here to make it clear. Monday morning, I arrived at the office by 7 a.m. Dallas was still half asleep, the towers around us just beginning to light up their lower floors. But on the 6th floor, Monroe Artisan Goods headquarters, every light was already on. I wasn't surprised to see Daphne waiting by the conference room door, arms crossed, hair neatly tied, next quarter's marketing plan printed and ready in her hands. I'm guessing you didn't sleep much, she said in her usual calm tone. I think last night was the first time I heard my heart beat louder than the packing machine, I replied, unlocking the door and inviting her in. Within 10 minutes, Jason from operations walked in with a detailed supply chain report for the next 3 months. Tamra, head of product, followed with her laptop and a thick notebook filled with handwritten notes. I looked at each of them. These 3 weren't just colleagues. They were the ones who pulled all-nighters with me every holiday season when orders tripled overnight. They never asked, "Aren't you going home for Christmas?" They just poured me a cup of coffee and kept packing boxes to meet the final UPS deadline. Thank you all for coming in early, I said firmly. I didn't keep this to myself because I didn't trust you. I just didn't want anyone caught in the fallout if things went sideways. Jason leaned on the table. You think we didn't notice what's been happening? Tamara nodded. You were the only reason this company survived COVID. But the moment Dylan posted that picture in front of Wharton, your mother started calling him the future of Monroe. Daphne slid a thick envelope across the table. This is my commitment letter. I've had it ready since last month. If you leave, I'm coming with you. I stared down at the envelope. My heart skipped. You don't need to say anything, Tamara cut in before I could speak. We're not loyal to them, we're loyal to you. Because you never abandoned this company even when no one stood behind you. I sat down slowly and opened my laptop. I have a plan. A new structure, a new name, a clear direction. I pitched it to Clarion yesterday morning. All eyes turned to me. They didn't say yes, but they didn't say no either. I can tell they're seriously considering it. Jason crossed his arms, smiling. If they're smart, they'll know where the real value is and who built it. I handed them copies of the plan, distribution model, production system, CRM structure, and the new brand strategy under the name Orion Foods. Everything was ready to launch the moment we got the green light. So, Daphne asked after reading through the materials, when do we have to decide? Tonight, I said, I'm meeting Clarion again to finalize things. They want a clear signal that if they back me, I won't be standing alone. Tamara stood. You won't be alone. I'll brief the R&D team today. Wherever you go, the product formulas go too. And I'll start preparing the customer data transfer to Orion's system, Jason added. No contracts broken. Everything we built is ours. We created that data. We own it. I looked at them again. In that moment, I realized something. A company isn't a name on the front of a building. It's people. It's those who stay when everything is on fire. The ones who don't need O's of loyalty because their loyalty lives in every decision, every late night shift, every email they send when you no longer have the strength to write your own. At exactly 8:59 a.m. Monday morning, I stepped into the sixth-floor conference room. My parents were already seated across the table, dressed as if preparing for a live interview on national television. Dylan, in a slate gray suit, hair slicked back, sat with his legs crossed, flipping through the strategic report I had spent 3 solid weeks writing. Whether he understood any of it, I had no idea, but he nodded along confidently, like he'd just read Apple's next 10-year vision. The overhead lights glared bright white. The air felt colder than usual, even though the thermostat hadn't changed. And the clock struck 9. Oh, clock. The door opened. Mr. Grant Halverson entered, followed by Miss Cheryl Liu and 2 attorneys representing Clarion Capital. They weren't carrying the old contract. My mother stood to greet Mr. Grant. We're very excited to discuss the future of the company. Mr. Grant nodded politely, then turned to me. Avery, I trust you're ready as well? I've never been more ready, I replied, my voice steady and clear. Everyone took their seats. Mr. Grant pulled 2 binders from his briefcase, one white, stamped with the Monroe Artisan Goods logo, one black, embossed with the words, Orion Foods Investment Term Sheet. I'll get straight to the point, he began. After reviewing Avery's proposal and analyzing the risks involved with leadership changes, we're presenting 2 investment paths. He pushed the white folder toward my parents. Option 1, Avery Monroe remains CEO for a minimum of 5 years with full operational authority. Dylan Monroe, if retained, will serve as strategic advisor with no independent decision-making powers, no financial control, and will report directly to the CEO. My mother froze. My father blinked rapidly. Dylan let out a short, dismissive laugh and turned to Mr. Grant. There must be some mistake. I was trained to lead, not assist. Mr. Grant didn't respond. He slid the black folder across the table to me. Option 2. Clarion will invest $10 million in Orion Foods, a new company founded and led by Avery Monroe. It will absorb the current executive team, production contracts, and operational data not exclusive to the Monroe brand. We're prepared to begin immediately. Silence thickened like fog. I could feel my mother's hand tighten on the armrest. My father looked at Dylan, his calm demeanor visibly slipping. This is a forced move, my mother hissed. No, ma'am, Miss Cheryl said sharply. This is a clear choice between reality and delusion. You may keep the Monroe name, but what makes it valuable is sitting on the other side of this table. The conference room door swung open. Daphne walked in first, then Jason. Tamara followed. One by one, 19 core employees entered and quietly lined up behind me, as if they had rehearsed this moment. Daphne spoke first, no script needed. If Avery leaves, we're going with her. Jason nodded. We don't work for the Monroe name. We work for the woman who stayed up with us when the packing machine caught fire. Nara added, we didn't pour our hearts into this company to be extras in some family succession drama. This is our choice. My father stood awkwardly, fumbling. You kids don't understand the full picture. We understand perfectly, sir, Daphne replied, eyes locked on him. We've watched every time Avery was sidelined just because she wasn't the son. My mother clutched Dylan's hand like she feared he might vanish in front of her. Avery, Mr. Grant turned to me. The decision is yours. We'll support either path, but our time is limited. I took a deep breath, looked around at the faces standing behind me. I already knew the answer. We choose Orion. The moment those words left my mouth, it felt like pulling the pin from a grenade. My mother stayed silent through almost the entire meeting after I said, "We choose Orion." She stared down at the white folder like each line of text was a personal insult. My father lifted his glasses off his nose, let out a slow breath as if trying to salvage whatever authority he had left in a room where it had clearly dissolved. Dylan still sat there, pale as a sheet, hands clenched around the corner of the strategy binder he had previously flipped through like a seasoned executive. After 23 seconds of tension so thick I could hear the second hand on the wall clock ticking, my father, Carl, slid the white folder back to the center of the table. "We'll sign," he said hoarsely. "Avery remains CEO. Dylan won't interfere with operations." Mr. Grant nodded. A wise decision. My mother still hadn't lifted her gaze. Finally, she picked up the pen and signed the contract like someone being forced to sell the ancestral home. Her hand trembled slightly, but her signature was clean. I wasn't happy. I wasn't angry either. I just felt lighter. Like a weight I had carried for too long had finally been removed. Dylan suddenly stood up, chair scraping harshly against the floor. So now I'm being shoved into an assistant role? His voice sharp, and for the first time in his life, I saw my brother displaced from his comfort zone. "The title is Director of Strategic Development," Ms. Sherrill said firmly. "But operational authority does not lie with you. All approvals, financial, staffing, partnerships remain under the CEO's authority." Dylan stared at me. "You've been waiting for this moment, haven't you?" I didn't answer. I just looked back at him with the calm gaze of someone who's long been used to being the afterthought in the very story she authored. "Our signatures will be finalized within 24 hours, Clarion's lawyer said. "The investment will be released per schedule, with the legal stipulation that any change to the CEO role requires unanimous written consent from the entire investment board." My father nodded without protest. "An official announcement will go out tomorrow morning," I said, voice steady. "I will continue as the chief executive. The Monroe family will transition into brand ambassador roles, no longer involved in operations." No one replied, but I could see in their faces they understood. The game was over. As soon as the meeting ended, I stepped into the hallway. Nearly 30 employees were waiting in silence. They said nothing, but their eyes spoke volumes. I gave a small nod. Jason stepped forward and shook my hand. "You're still the captain," he said, "and we're still on this ship." I replied with just one sentence: "I won't let anyone be erased again." That afternoon, I had our internal assistant distribute a company-wide announcement. It stated, "Avery Monroe will retain full CEO authority for a minimum of 5 years under the new investment agreement. Dylan Monroe is appointed Director of Strategic Development with no authority over budget, hiring, or contract approvals without the CEO's sign-off. Carl and June Monroe are stepping away from management, retaining honorary titles as co-founders with no involvement in daily operations." I also instructed the legal team to update the organizational chart. For the first time in 8 years, my name stood at the very top without any asterisk, without the note interim. That night, I got home late. When I opened my phone, there was a text from my mother. "If you think winning one meeting means you've won over your family, I feel sorry for you." I read it, then deleted it without replying. Tomorrow, I had something bigger to do. Take Monroe exactly where I once promised myself I would. To the top. A place they never believed existed, but I always knew was real. 6 months after I signed the final contract with Clarion Capital, Monroe Artisan Goods had opened 2 new branches, one in Phoenix and one in Charlotte. Last quarter's revenue rose 46%, far surpassing projections. Our newest product line, Harvest and Hearth, the one Dylan once dismissed as too emotional, now made up over 30% of total sales. We just secured a deal with the national grocery chain Morrison's, placing our products on shelves in both Alaska and Hawaii for the first time. I still sat in the same spot on the 6th floor, at the desk facing I-35. But everything had changed. Meeting agendas were no longer interrupted. There were no last-minute family opinions forced in. and no one brought up how Dylan needed more hands-on experience. I still saw my parents, once every 3 months, at brand photo shoots where they showed up as living symbols of our legacy. They remained polite, punctual, smiling for every frame. But after the camera lights went off, there were no family lunches, no unsolicited advice, and most importantly, no more sideways glances hinting at the rightful heir. As for Dylan, he still sat in on strategy meetings, but he spoke less. His ideas usually ended up in the for consideration pile. The last time I let him speak publicly at an investor conference, he drifted off topic 3 minutes in. Since then, he seemed to realize observation was the better role. And me? I no longer sought validation from any of them. I didn't need it. This morning, walking into our newly finished manufacturing facility north of Austin, I paused in front of a bronze plaque on the wall. Monroe Artisan Production Center, expanded by the vision of CEO Avery Monroe. Something tightened in my throat. Not tears, just the quiet weight of a journey finally come full circle. I remembered that night 8 years ago, sitting alone in the storage room, counting every dollar to make payroll for Jason. The icy morning, I hand-packed 200 gift boxes and knocked on doors to get people to try something new. The looks from old friends who couldn't believe I'd left Wall Street to sell handmade cookies in Texas. Now, those same people send me emails inviting me to speak at women's leadership conferences. I haven't accepted yet. There's still too much work to do. Last night, I received a small wooden box in the mail, no return label, but I knew my mother's handwriting. Inside was an old photo. I was about 8, standing at our kitchen counter, clutching a hand mixer, face covered in flour. On the back, she had written, "You've always been the one who kept the rhythm." I read it over and over. I didn't cry, I didn't smile, I just felt seen. I tucked the photo into the drawer beneath my invitation to speak at the Forbes Women's Summit. Maybe I'll go, maybe I won't, but one thing is certain. I don't need another award to prove my worth. Because in the end, I've come to understand one thing. Legacy doesn't live in a name on the packaging. Legacy is what you build with your own 2 hands, when no one else believes you can. And I built it, once, and this time for good. Avery's story is a powerful reminder that legacy isn't inherited through blood, it's built through persistence and true vision. In real life, so many carry the weight of family duty while being overlooked for not fitting a traditional role. But like Avery, when we choose to rise, claim our rightful place, and back it with results, we don't just change the game, we rewrite the rules. And sometimes, the greatest validation is realizing we no longer need it. What do you think about Avery's choices and how she stood up to her family? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt, thought-provoking stories about life and family.